Welcome to Talk Dizzy to Me's Unsteady and Unfiltered, the segment where we ditch the medical jargon and dive straight into real life experiences, the good, the bad, and the downright dizzy.
Been there, done that. Hi, I'm your host, Christine Moyer, and I will be sharing plenty of stories, tips, and laughs. Whether you're wobbling through life like a toddler on roller skates, or you feel like the floor is a conveyor belt underneath of you, you have found your people. In this episode of Unsteady and Unfiltered, I'll be sharing a brief history of my diagnosis journey. So grab a seat because let's be real, standing might not be in the cards for you today. And let's get down and dizzy. Welcome to the first episode of Unfiltered and Unsteady. I am so excited to be here. As I sat down to write notes for the first episode, I realized that I am the personality hire. I bring the comedy, and I love that for me. And if you follow me on socials, you know that I am hilarious and humble. But it appears that this comedic brilliance cannot be restrained by the confines of pre-planning. Because I was writing and every single funny cell in my body just left and floated into the abyss. So, as the title says, this truly is unsteady and unfiltered, authentic. In 2023, I was a guest on Talk Dizzy to Me, where I shared a deep dive into my diagnosis, and we will link it in the show notes below. So if you would like to listen to more of my backstory, the details, not the TLDR that I'm going to give today, you can click that link and listen to it there. In 2021, I was juggling flaming basketballs. It is post-COVID. I'm a busy mom. I have a 4.0 in grad school. What? Like it's hard? And a breakup. That part was hard. And I'm progressing in my career and I'm working full time. And it all went up in flames. I am a chronic sufferer of sinus infections and ear infections. And at the time, I was battling an ear infection. I was at work. I was at lunch one day with a coworker, and all of a sudden the room started to skip around me. She had been talking with her hands a lot while we were eating, and I said, "Hey, can you put your hands down, please? Something's wrong. The room is skipping around me. The floor is also moving. Something is not right." I ended up in the hospital being diagnosed with vertigo. Please let me remind you, I'm going to say this over and over again, but vertigo is not a diagnosis, it is a symptom. Diagnosed with vertigo, sent on my way, completely bedridden. The neuro that worked for the hospital told me to smile more. And I don't know why I didn't think of that. Probably because I don't have a medical degree in neurology. Just kidding, I love doctors. I'm bedridden and I'm on leave from work. And I end up seeing 13 doctors in 13 weeks, which is not uncommon for someone with a vestibular disorder. I believe the average is 7, but I like to be more than average. I went to neuros, otolaryngologists, primary care, vestibular physical therapists, and otoneuro. I was given a bunch of different diagnoses: vestibular migraine, Meniere's disease, and a plethora of other ones that I honestly can't recall at this point. At one point, the ENT that I was seeing prescribed 50 milligrams of amitriptyline for what he diagnosed as vestibular migraine. If anybody has been on amitriptyline, you know that 50 milligrams is an insane dose. And the reason I'm saying that is because this further spun up my anxiety, because I was getting so severe after being overdosed with amitriptyline that my anxiety went through the roof. Then the panic attack started, and I wouldn't leave the house unless it was against my will or I had a doctor's appointment. Eventually, within the same week, my neuro team and my vestibular physical therapist, who were not working together, came up with the diagnosis for me, which was 3PD, or persistent postural perceptual dizziness. Nailed it. It was most likely due to what they think was vestibular neuritis. And if you're interested in hearing more about the diagnostic criteria for 3PD, Dr. Danny and Dr. Abby discuss it more in the original episode that I was in on Talk Dizzy to Me, which again will be linked in the show notes below. After getting my diagnosis for 3PD, I went full speed, full bore into the healing pie that is required for vestibular disorders. And my journey was full of ups and downs. It was not easy, and it was a lot of work to get me and keep me on my baseline. Sometimes I get a little sidetracked and off of it even nowadays, but we're 3 years in and I have established my baseline, and for the most part, that is where I stay. On the next episode of Unsteady and Unfiltered, I will be talking about the steps that I took to find my baseline, to maintain my baseline, and the journey that I went on to go from bedridden to here. So I will be leaving you with a little bit of a cliffhanger, because who doesn't love a cliffhanger? I don't, because I struggle enough on flat ground. Am I right? Thanks for hanging out with me today on Talk Dizzy to Me's Unsteady and Unfiltered. Remember, you are not alone. There is a huge vestibular community out there that is ready to share their experience, their journey, and hope. You are not alone. If you're looking to improve your vestibular health, email info@balancingactrehab.com to get started. For additional free resources, subscribe to Balancing Act Resources on YouTube and following at Balancing Act Rehab on social media platforms. You can hear more from me at That Dizzy Girl with 3 Z's. Yes, that's 3 Z's like 3PD. And until next time, stay steady, my friends. Nailed it!
This podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
The content of this podcast is based on general knowledge and information available up until the recording of this specific episode. Medical knowledge and practices may evolve over time, and new information may emerge that could change the understanding or treatment of vestibular dysfunction. It is important to consult a qualified healthcare professional for the most up-to-date and personalized advice.
The information provided in this podcast is meant to complement, not replace, the relationship that exists between a patient and their healthcare provider. It is intended to empower patients with knowledge about vestibular dysfunction and its management, but individual cases may vary, and treatment approaches should be tailored to each patient's unique circumstances.
By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to the terms of this medical disclaimer. The organizers, presenters, and creators of this podcast are not liable for any actions or decisions taken by individuals based on the information presented herein. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider for medical advice and treatment.